Francisco Lázaro was the first athlete to die during Olympic competition in 1912 in Stockholm. Before hydration planning, temperature monitoring, or modern race protocols, Olympic marathons were largely left to endurance and chance. On July 14, 1912, Portuguese runner Francisco Lázaro lined up in Stockholm to compete in the Olympic marathon. He was 21 years old, a carpenter by trade, and had trained primarily in Portugal's milder climate. That afternoon, conditions were unusually severe. Temperatures rose toward 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and the long, exposed course offered little relief from the sun. Before the race began, Lázaro made a decision he believed would protect him. To prevent sunburn, he coated much of his body in a mixture of wax and animal fat. Instead of helping, the layer restricted his ability to sweat efficiently, interfering with the body's primary cooling mechanism. The race began without incident. As runners progressed through the course, however, the heat began taking its toll. Several competitors withdrew due to exhaustion. Lázaro continued, but witnesses later described visible signs of physical distress. His movement became unstable, and he appeared disoriented as his body temperature rose. Late in the race, he collapsed on the roadside. Medical personnel transported him to a hospital in Stockholm, where doctors attempted to stabilize him and lower his temperature. He never recovered. Francisco Lázaro died the following morning from complications linked to severe heat stroke and dehydration. His death contributed to growing awareness of the risks of endurance events in extreme conditions and influenced the gradual introduction of water access and medical oversight in marathon racing. Hours before the opening ceremony of the 2010 Winter Olympics, the most serious incident of the Games occurred during a training run. Georgian luger Nodar Kumaritashvili, 21 years old, was completing a final practice descent at the Whistler Sliding Center. Luge is among the fastest Olympic sports, with athletes lying on their backs on small sleds while steering through high-banked ice turns at extreme speeds. The Whistler track had already drawn concern from competitors for its velocity and technical demands. Kumaritashvili began his run normally, accelerating down the course and navigating the early turns without issue. As he entered the final section, his speed approached typical elite racing range. Video analysis later showed a slight drift toward the outer wall entering a curve. He attempted to correct his line, but the adjustment destabilized the sled. The sled climbed the banking and ejected him from the track. He was thrown into the air and struck an exposed steel support structure at high speed. Medical teams responded immediately and attempted resuscitation, but the injuries were fatal. He was pronounced dead later that day. The incident led to immediate modifications to the course, including raising wall heights, adding padding, and adjusting starting positions to reduce speed for subsequent runs. Centennial Olympic Park bombing began not inside a competition venue, but in a public gathering space built to celebrate the Games. During the Summer Olympics, Centennial Olympic Park served as a central meeting point for spectators and visitors. Concerts, public events, and nightly gatherings drew large crowds throughout the duration of the Games. In the early hours of July 27, 1996, the park was busy with people attending a late-night performance. At approximately 1:20 a.m., a security guard noticed an unattended backpack beneath a bench. He alerted authorities and an evacuation began, but there was limited time to clear the area. Minutes later, a pipe bomb concealed inside the bag detonated. The explosion killed one person instantly and injured more than 100 others. Panic spread across the park as emergency services responded to the scene. In the aftermath, another individual died from a heart attack connected to the chaos and stress following the blast. The device had been packed with nails and metal fragments intended to maximize injury. The attack triggered a massive investigation. Initial suspicion focused on a security guard who had helped identify the suspicious package, though he was later cleared. Years afterward, authorities identified Eric Rudolph as responsible. He had carried out the bombing as part of a broader domestic extremist campaign. He was eventually captured and convicted, receiving multiple life sentences. The incident had immediate consequences for Olympic operations. Security measures across Atlanta were intensified, and subsequent international sporting events reassessed crowd screening, surveillance practices, and coordination between local and federal agencies. Unlike accidents tied to athletic competition, This tragedy highlighted vulnerabilities in the public spaces surrounding the Games, demonstrating that the scale and visibility of the Olympics could attract threats extending beyond sport itself. Not all Olympic-related deaths occur during competition. Some unfold during routine activities surrounding the Games. Swiss speed skier Nicola Bochatey was in France during the 1992 Albertville Winter Olympics, where speed skiing was featured as a demonstration sport. The discipline involves descending specially prepared slopes at extreme velocities, and Bochatey was an experienced participant. On February 22nd, he chose to ski recreationally on a public slope, separate from the official event course. He was using standard alpine equipment rather than specialized speed skiing gear. Conditions were clear, and slope maintenance vehicles were operating in the area. While descending, Bochatey encountered a snow grooming machine positioned on the run. Accounts indicate he either misjudged his line or lost control before impact. At skiing speed, he was unable to avoid the vehicle and collided with it directly. The injuries were immediately fatal despite rapid response from personnel nearby. Unlike the other tragedies connected to the Olympics, this one did not unfold on a course or inside a venue. It began inside the Olympic Village itself. In the early hours of September 5, 1972, 8 members of the Palestinian militant group Black September entered the athletes' quarters, housing the Israeli delegation. Security around the village was deliberately light, designed to present the Games as open and peaceful. The group scaled the perimeter fencing and forced entry into the building, taking members of the team hostage. 2 Israelis were killed during the initial confrontation, while 9 others were captured. The attackers demanded the release of prisoners held in Israel and safe transport out of Germany. What followed was a prolonged standoff that unfolded live on international television. Negotiations continued throughout the day, while authorities attempted to organize a rescue. Planning was complicated by limited coordination between agencies and a lack of specialized counter-terror response capability at the time. By evening, German officials arranged transport to an airbase outside Munich under the pretense of allowing the group to depart by aircraft. The operation was intended to create an opportunity for a rescue attempt. However, the execution of the plan was flawed. The number of militants had been misjudged, sniper positioning was inadequate, and communication between units was poor. A firefight broke out on the runway. In the chaotic exchange, the situation escalated beyond control. Explosions and gunfire followed, resulting in the deaths of all 9 remaining Israeli hostages, along with a German police officer. 5 of the attackers were also killed. The incident halted Olympic competition and led to memorial ceremonies before events resumed. Beyond the immediate impact, the attack reshaped global approaches to security at major international events. Future Games introduced significantly expanded protective infrastructure, surveillance systems, and specialized response planning to address threats of this nature. The Munich attack remains one of the most consequential tragedies ever associated with the Olympic Games, not because of athletic risk, but because it exposed the vulnerability of international gatherings on a global stage. The heat on the roads outside Rome was already intense when the cycling teams began their race. On August 26, 1960, Danish rider Knud Enemark Jensen competed in the Olympic team time trial, a long-distance event requiring coordinated pacing between 4 cyclists rotating positions at high speed. Temperatures climbed well above 100 degrees Fahrenheit, placing heavy stress on endurance and hydration. Before the race, Jensen had taken a circulatory stimulant that was legal at the time but later associated with dangerous side effects under extreme exertion. During the early stages, he maintained position within the team rotation. As the race progressed, however, observers noticed signs of decline. His pedaling became uneven, his balance unstable, and he struggled to hold formation. Teammates initially interpreted this as normal fatigue in harsh conditions. Near the later portion of the course, Jensen began drifting across the road before collapsing from his bicycle. Officials reached him quickly and identified symptoms consistent with severe heat stress. He was transported to a hospital in Rome but died shortly afterward. He was 23 years old. Subsequent investigation pointed to a combination of extreme temperature, physical strain, and the stimulant's effects on circulation. His death became an early catalyst for international concern over drug use in sport and contributed to the eventual development of formal Olympic anti-doping controls. The downhill course above Innsbruck demanded precision, and mistakes at speed left little margin for recovery. In January 1964, Australian skier Ross Milne was training ahead of the Winter Olympics on a course known for its technical sections and high velocities. At 19 years old, he had arrived early to familiarize himself with European racing conditions and prepare for competition on terrain far more demanding than what he typically encountered at home. During a training run, Milne descended at racing pace through a series of fast turns. Snow conditions were firm and quick, allowing high speeds but offering little forgiveness for loss of control. As he approached one section of the course, he drifted wide from the intended line. Whether due to equipment instability or technique, a breakdown could not be conclusively determined, but he was unable to regain control. Carried off the prepared racing surface, Milne entered a wooded area bordering the course. He struck multiple trees before coming to a stop. Rescue teams arrived rapidly, but the injuries sustained were fatal. He died at the scene at age 19. The incident underscored the risks of high-speed alpine training and contributed to growing emphasis on course design considerations, including wider cleared safety zones and protective measures aimed at reducing collision hazards along racing lines. Typhoid lake cases unfolded during an era when Olympic infrastructure lacked many of the health standards later taken for granted. At the time, events connected to the Games were integrated into the broader World's Fair environment. Aquatic competitions and exhibitions were held in an artificial lake constructed on the fairgrounds. The body of water was not isolated for athletic use. Livestock from nearby exhibits were allowed to enter and stand in the same lake, contaminating the water supply. Athletes participating in water polo and swimming competed in these conditions without awareness of the risks. Among them were American competitors David Bratton and George Van Cleef, who took part in aquatic events that exposed them directly to the polluted water. In the months following the competitions, both men developed typhoid fever, a serious bacterial infection commonly transmitted through contaminated water sources. Medical treatment options at the time were limited, and both athletes died within 4 months of exposure. Unlike accidents occurring during competition, this case reflected environmental and sanitation failures rather than immediate physical trauma. The deaths contributed to broader recognition of public health risks tied to sporting events and reinforced the need for regulated water quality standards in organized competition environments. Estadio Nacional disaster in Lima in 1964 occurred during a football match linked to Olympic qualification and became one of the deadliest crowd incidents in sports history. On May 24th, Peru faced Argentina in a qualifying match at the National Stadium in Lima. Late in the game, a refereeing decision disallowed a Peruvian goal, provoking outrage among home supporters. Frustration escalated rapidly, and spectators began entering the pitch in protest. Police responded by deploying tear gas into the stands in an attempt to restore order. Instead, the reaction triggered panic. Thousands of spectators attempted to flee simultaneously through stadium exits that were partially closed or obstructed by metal shutters. The resulting crush proved catastrophic. Many victims were compressed against barriers or trapped in passageways, leading to asphyxiation and internal injuries. Others were injured or killed in the chaos as the crowd surged toward limited escape routes. The final death toll reached into the hundreds, with many more injured, making it one of the most severe stadium disasters ever recorded. The scale of the tragedy forced a reassessment of crowd management, emergency access planning, and evacuation procedures in large sporting venues worldwide. Rio 2016 saw tragedy strike during the Paralympic cycling events on the city's mountainous road circuit. During the Rio 2016 Paralympic Games, Iranian cyclist Bahman Golbarnezhad competed in the C4 to C5 road race, an event held on a mountainous circuit outside the city. The course featured steep descents and technical turns that demanded precise handling at high velocity. Midway through the race, riders began navigating one of the downhill sections where speeds increased significantly. While descending, Golbarnezhad lost control of his bicycle and crashed. The exact mechanics of the fall were not fully established, but the impact caused severe trauma. Medical teams reached him quickly and transported him to a nearby hospital. Despite emergency treatment, he died later that day from cardiac arrest following the injuries sustained in the crash. He was 48 years old. His death marked the first fatality during Paralympic competition. Here are some of the darkest tragedies connected to the Olympic Games. Moments where competition or the environment surrounding the event led to fatal consequences. Which of these stories shocked you the most? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it, boost it, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. See you soon for more dark stories.